Well, my friends, I am excited tonight. I am grateful that, whoa, more people came while I was singing. Welcome, welcome. I didn't get to say hi to all of you, but we're glad you're here. Do you know, I love that song. Wasn't that beautiful? And holy places, what a powerful thought. And I want to have that kind of spirit as we talk about polygamy, plural marriage, where it's a conversation have you ever had one in any of your classes? So, growing up, I mean, raise your hands. How many times have you had a lesson on polygamy? Have you had at least once? So this is going to be our first time, maybe? Okay. Where was that at?
Somewhere in Utah.
In Utah?
Yeah, so.
Like in a ward or a institute?
Probably institute.
Institute. The gospel, yeah?
People in your religion class. Oh.
Nice. And that was a little bit ago. In 2018, the church started a course that's called the Foundations of the Restoration. And it coincided with doctrinal mastery for seminary. And the doctrinal mastery for seminary was, we're going to start talking about these things in seminary. And so, topics that have been kind of out there in the public, and usually you hear about them when you're on a mission and antis throw them at you. And that was my experience. I'm the first time on my mission in Oakland. I'm just barely out of Utah and on my mission, and someone's like, polygamy. I'm like, yeah, I didn't really ever learn about that. What do we do with polygamy? We moved to Texas. Our 11-year-old son comes home from school. Said, Mom, Dad, they asked me at school if we live polygamy. What's that? So we hadn't really brought our children up teaching them about polygamy, right? But the rest of the world wants to remind us that was one of our doctrines. And so even if you haven't had too many lessons on it, but just let's talk for a minute. That topic, how do you feel about it? What's been your feeling about the church and polygamy? When people have asked you about it, are you thrilled? What do you feel? Yeah.
It's part of the restoration.
Okay, so you just feel that's part of the restoration. All right, please.
My grandfather is a son of a polygamist. And it was very interesting in our family, very hush-hush, because it was close to the time that the church rescinded not the order, but the order came out to stop polygamy. And so there was a giant skeleton in the closet in our family until the family genealogists were able to go to Salt Lake and look at the timing of the authorized marriages, and it happened just in time before the manifest, what's it called? The
Manifesto.
came out. And so, yeah, it was a weird thing growing up in our family.
Yeah.
Understanding that. So it's closer to me than I thought it would be.
Yeah. Good. What else? Yeah.
My family is always proud of polygamy. We had it on both sides of my mother's family. Her grandparents, her great-grandparents. And it was very common. We weren't upset about it or ashamed about
Good.
it.
Proud of polygamy.
Well, I mean, it was what it was, and my family came from not the first wife on either side.
Awesome. Please, and that's it.
My grandfather was a polygamist.
Uh-huh.
I don't think there's very people that can say that. Hold on.
Wait, you said your grandfather.
What?
Which?
My grandfather was
grandfather.
a polygamist. My grandfather.
Yeah, no, that's that's awesome.
I'm very proud of that.
Okay. Any other thought in that?
Well, I go back because I'm my great grandfather, so it wasn't that far back either.
Yeah.
But I think it's interesting because I worked on a family search, and you can't necessarily see the other lines. I think I'm probably not looking right, but when I briefly looked to see, the different wives that I come from, because I wasn't from the first one. My great grandmother.
Yeah.
I think she was 2 or 3.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember, but
Do you know
so
it's
just part of growing up.
It's an interesting topic. It's not one of our, foundational doctrines of faith, repentance, baptism. It's one of those secondary kind of questions. And I hope that as we talk that we'll remember, all right, you've got the primary things to work out, the Jesus Christ, your testimony, Book of Mormon, restored gospel, but the atonement of Jesus Christ is the core. And secondary questions are forever. And so I hope as we talk about one of the secondary questions, we can kind of feel the core of it. And that core would be prophets and revelation and the struggle to follow a prophet. And whether it's polygamy or take a lamb and go kill it and put the blood on your door, you're going to be normal if you go, what? That's weird. Nevertheless, and I went and got that lamb and took it. And so we're going to see that. So 2018 with that curriculum would be the first time that I'd ever teach polygamy in a class after teaching for 20 years. And church finally made curriculum, gave it to us. And I think it goes to just a lot of things where we're in such an information age. I hope we're embracing it. I hope none of us are like, oh, I wish that would have never come out. It's past that. We have got to know these things. I wish I had this quote. Oh. I was listening to a podcast and they talked about a little learning is a dangerous thing, and then drinking largely sobers us again. I just thought that was beautiful. Sometimes just a little bit of information is enough to make us go berserk and not to wonder what's going on. And if we'll plow through and learn more and just go, okay, here's something I haven't wanted to read, I haven't wanted to be a part of, and I'm just going to get into it and really try to understand it. On the other side of that, you may just have something happen that you didn't expect. The other thing was, they said, first gulp from a glass of natural sciences will make you an atheist, but get to the bottom of the glass and God is waiting for you. So, again, just that idea of so many times we get a little bit of information, and I think that's what happens to the world. They get a little bit of information about our church and with polygamy, and then they just take it a whole different direction. And no one's going to pay the price to get into it and really say, let's ask the question. So if you have questions, my number is 979-595-6290. I'm going to have my phone ready. Okay, this is a live class here. We just send me in your quotes, your questions. Oh, good. Oh, we already have a couple of them. Perfect. So just a couple. Oh, please.
Your mic is,
Well, it doesn't go through the system.
it seems like we're having a hard time hearing all of your comments.
Yeah, this is getting. Okay, I'll just talk louder.
You had a mic last time.
Did I have a mic last time? Pause.
Yeah, that's enough.
Well, last time I wasn't here, so I don't know if she knows.
When was the last time? 2 months.
Is that true? We can adjust to the class. I'm not sure. Folks. Oh, here. There you go.
Probably have to turn it on, jump on.
Oh, yeah. I think one time I had a lapel mic one time, didn't I?
Yeah.
Yeah. Wait, did you?
I can hear you.
Yeah, they got the new one.
Oh, I think I turned it off. Let's see. We'll try it.
All right.
Talk.
Test. Turn it on, then it works. Okay. So, here's kind of the journey. We're gonna take some time. We're gonna talk about a lot of things, but just something just to start off with, just a model with anything that we're studying. It comes from Faith is Not Blind from the Hafens. They gave a talk called Love is Not Blind at BYU, and it's the same principles. And seriously, this is like the best thing I've ever read, and I wish everyone would just read the book and apply it to your parenting, to your marriage, and everything. Basically, what it is we all start off in simplicity. Whether we were young kids and life is just glorious and good, and then parents get divorced. Now we go into complexity. Or we're first married, and it's just a honeymoon phase, right? It's that simplicity. We all start there. Adam and Eve, Garden of Eden, simplicity. You eat an apple, boink, you're now in complexity. Right? It's just a pattern. And that is where Satan and his hosts are prowling. That's where they are there to say, ooh, you're done. That you just went from this, and none of this was true. All of this was false. And so give up. So in a marriage, this is where divorce happens. Never happens down here, and never happens up here. This is where we meet the church. It's during the complexity. It's you grew up with, oh, this is how the church works and how it looks, and you're like, Joseph Smith. No, Brigham Young wasn't polygamous. Joseph Smith, what? 30 to 40 wives? No, I've never heard that, so yeah, it can't be true. Yeah, that's true. That's some complexity. And so whatever it is, whether it's spiritual or with your spouse or whoever or with work, do you see that pattern in your life? There's that simple time, there's that good time, and then you get into complexity. And then as we work through complexity and wrestle with it, we move into what's called settled simplicity. You're back at the simplicity, but now it's a more mature, informed simplicity. You're back to that peace. And yes, I worked through that. It's still there. It's still happening. Whether it's the divorce or the doctrine or whatever it was, the abuse or whatever. I've worked through it, and now I'm at another end of that. So that's sort of a big picture item that I hope you'd apply, not just to the topic of this, but anything. Because I don't know when you first woke up to some of the complexity of plural marriage, polygamy in your life, if you remember when it kind of undermined you and whatnot, but I know that Satan is right there with a really strong garden hose as soon as it happened and just sprayed it at your feet to get the ground to start to crumble under you. And then there might be some in here that's like, I just came because I needed something to do on Friday night. This topic doesn't even interest me, so thank you. But others are like, I'm wrestling with this. I mean, I was thinking of the spectrum of where we're at here. Like, I don't care my life's dependent on figuring this out. And so that's a model that I wanted to share with you. The other model is this. We've got a whole bunch of truth up here on the board. And it's important as we go and seek out anything, and this is where so many things, especially polygamy, we get things wrong. There's a lot of truths. We need to also make sure that we get the whole truth and nothing but the truth, which means it's all contained in this. This out here, when there's something clear over here and Satan says, hey, this is the truth, you can kind of say, yeah, I can tell that's not very close, but this is what he does more than anything, right? So there's that truth. And there's the false. And so there's sources that we've got to look at and say, hey, you know what, I've heard this about Joseph Smith. I've heard, well, you tell me, when it comes to polygamy, what are some of those things that you hear that at first hearing you go, ooh, this is rough.
Polyandry,
Woo! Which is marrying,
a woman who's already married to someone else.
okay? Ooh, yeah, yikes. That's the truth. He did marry women who were already married, okay? What's another one? You have your fun. I can tell it's 2 and 3 are coming here.
Okay, I can live probably with this. But it's funny, I heard some of the other people talking about polygamy in their family. And to be perfectly honest, I'm the same, in the same boat. My great-grandmother was polygamous family. But unlike, someone said they had a positive experience with their grandmother, my grandmother was the complete opposite. My great-grandmother was the first woman to ever graduate from the University of Utah, and she was a second wife, and she was a school teacher, and she left. But on top of that, I grew up in Salt Lake, and in my school, we have polygamists. In elementary school, junior high, and high school. And so when I hear some of you talk about your grandparents told you about the positive aspects of polygamy, I'm like, have you ever been around it for maybe 10 or 12 years or to see it? But anyways, back to your question.
Yeah. So,
Polyamy's one, the age of the girls.
okay, and that one, I mean, we're in a room where we can be honest with each other. People don't go, oh, and the age of the girls was uncomfortable. What do they call Joseph? Yeah, and when you hear that in our world today, that's a whole slew of feelings that come with it, right? So you see how Satan works with that? Is it true that he married a 14-year-old that about, I think 6 months later, turned 15? Not that that helps it at all. But is it true?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Back then, that
But
was.
to label him pedophile, is that the whole truth?
No.
So there's something we need to learn about that. And when we do, maybe we'll have a different view of that. By the way, I don't think they started using the term pedophile until like the 1900s. So I don't know what was before that, but anyway. Okay, so there's just two of the things.
Can we keep going?
Let's go one more. Those are the two I'm prepared for.
Um,
I'll let you take the other ones, Eric.
How about when people say Mormons don't practice polygamy today?
Yeah.
Just say mainstream Mormons don't practice today legally, but they do spiritually.
Right.
In other words, Mormons' doctrine believes that in pre-existence, we practice polygamy. In other words, we all believe that we came from the same God, but we may have come from a different mother.
And we'd have to investigate that. And so that might be true. We do come from God, but is that the whole truth? And what is that? And I would venture to guess on that one, we don't know. Just because when President Hinckley was interviewed about our next life, and you know how the world says you're going to have your own planet, he says we don't know about that. So where sometimes I've noticed as the church where we say, well, this is the way it is, we are gap fillers. We get uncomfortable in the voids. And so a lot of times we'll fill them, and I didn't put that kind of a picture up there, but that's the other picture I think we have to be careful of, which I know what you're talking about, but I'm not prepared for that.
And then, of course, after death, we still believe
What
in
happens
still
then?
born one woman.
Yeah.
For example, we have prophets
So-
who are still born one woman.
So now here's the question then. Here's my first question for you. Okay, let's see. We talked to boom, boom, boom. Restoration. All right, first of all, how many here, some of you have already said, but how many here have polygamy ancestors? Polygamous ancestors. Look around. They say that 20% of the church today is from that stock. That's 3 million people. Yeah, that's what I heard. Yeah.
That's true.
So 17 million. I said 17 million. We're 3 million. All right. And so, and then this is the big one. How many of you have heard that you're going to, or taught, or because this age group especially, we all kind of grew up at the same times. How many of you have heard that we're going to have to live it in order to be in the celestial kingdom? Or you were taught it at least. Not that you believe it now, but you at least have heard that. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so that's kind of where I want to start, is it's true that somebody that's married to more than one person and sealed to them is going to be in the next life too. But is it the whole truth that everyone's got to go through that we've all got to accept it? No. So turn to section 131 of your Doctrine and Covenants. I'm not sure when I'm going to check text here. I'm going to have to pause here once in a while. Section 131, seeing the celestial glory, the exaltation, and I as you're studying Doctrine and Covenants this year, I mean, this is at the end of Doctrine and Covenants. And I love that what we're seeing is this unfolding of faith, repentance, baptism, and restoration, and all this stuff is happening. And some of these bigger concept things don't come to the very end, because the building blocks all came in. I think that's just beautiful, how those all kind of had their way of unfolding. So in our lives, I think there's a way for these difficult things to unfold in our lives too. Be patient with the restoration. Don't want all of it that first day that Joseph Smith comes out of the grove. He's going to have 14 years of restoration, but since him, there's been a lot of it happen. And there's been some messy things with it. That's the way God does things. All right, so in section 131, this is given in 43. In the celestial glory, there are 3 heavens or degrees, and in order to obtain the highest, a man must enter into this order of the priesthood, meaning the new and everlasting covenant of marriage. If he does not, he cannot attain it. He may enter into the other, but that is the end to his kingdom. He cannot have an increase. So we have, I've run out of places for circles. We're going to get rid of this. So picture this is celestial marriage or eternal marriage. And this is just what we're going to see in section 132 as well, is eternal celestial marriage is what exalts you. Being sealed to a spouse. A subset of that is plural. Okay? So all plural marriages are celestial marriages. But not all celestial marriages are plural marriages. Do we understand that?
Get the microphone.
Oh, sorry. So we have this new and everlasting covenant of marriage. That is being married to somebody, sealed to them, brings about your exaltation. A subset of that is plural marriage. So all plural marriages are also celestial or eternal marriages, but not all eternal and celestial marriages are plural marriages. That should help a lot, especially if you just were raised on different kinds of teachings. Okay? And then that is laid out in where I'll share a couple quotes here from some of your reading. But in section 132, your chapter heading, this is right after that in 43, except for it's not. This started in 31. Imagine Joseph Smith finishes the Book of Mormon, and the Lord says, let's keep that revelation going. Get your family Bible. Start in Genesis. First thing he does when he gets in Genesis, he gets a whole book. Instead of Genesis chapter 1, he starts with Moses. And like the first 3 chapters of Moses aren't even in the Bible. They're just missing from the Bible, and that's JST. And so he's going through that, and then later we're going to get Abraham, and Abraham will say, we'll prove them to see if they will do all things. But eventually, when he's going through his Bible, doing the Joseph Smith translation, it's not surprising, is it? That as he's translating, things come up, and new revelations come. And so in your chapter heading, you'll see that although this is written in 43, it says there's evidence indicates that some of the principles involved in this revelation were known by the prophet as early as 1831, when he is translating the Bible and he gets to Genesis and he goes, Lord, what about these multiple marriages? And so we're going to see very early on, we don't have all of the information. Okay, that again, we don't want to fill the gaps. But early on in Kirtland, he is going to attempt to fulfill this law. So somewhere along the line, he must have been asked to live it. And he'll marry Fanny Alger. That will be his first plural wife. And you guys, I just have to say, it's just awkward. When you read any of this stuff, it's really interesting how the Lord really puts us in the driving seat at age 2 and just gives us the keys and lets us start driving. And we are maniacs driving at age 2. Now, I couldn't find the quote, but it was Elder Oaks that once said that the Lord often gives commandments of what to do, but he doesn't exactly tell us how to do it.
We gotta figure that out for ourselves.
Right?
Why?
Why?
This is something so important. Why would
I know. but guys, you remember what happens when he announces, hey, anyone that, he's at a funeral and says, well, you can be baptized for those that are dead. What happens? Let's go down there. And that jumps in the Mississippi and she gets baptized for her dad. We have women baptized for men and men for, and it's not until Revelation comes later, it says, stop, wait, build a temple, come and do the baptisms in the temple. And it's not until Brigham Young says, now let's keep it gender specific. Men get baptized for men, but until then, you just go and get baptized for anybody. To us, that almost sounds crazy, doesn't it? But that was these 2-year-olds jumping in the car and saying, drive it. They loved the idea, but they were given no direction. So I got to tell you, after I studied all this in 2018 and was ready to teach the first time, I came home and I told Annette, I have a testimony of polygamy. Not where we live. So relieved. But I have a testimony of how amazing this generation of saints was.
Yeah.
Wow. Talk about rock stars. We have to be careful of presentism. Presentism, is that the right way to say it?
Yes.
Yeah, boy. That is where we put all of our views on something in the past. We're being unfair. That's as unfair as when you go on a trip, cruise or wherever, and you go to a country and go, well, this is weird. They're weird. Why do they do that? Why don't they do this? It would be so much better if they just did this. And we're imposing our Americanism on their country. We impose our 2025 on 1800s. It's not fair. Can you imagine Victorian era people? They follow a prophet. It's all hunky-dory. And then all of a sudden, he's teaching you a principle about plurality of wives. Wow. That's where I thought, wow. The pioneers didn't have a ram in the thicket. They actually did it. Abraham was commanded to go do something, and he was blessed because the Lord said, great, that was enough. Just needed to show me. That's good. Now, in a lot of the readings, I don't know if you're able to do it, but as you read it, look for historians' language. They're not definitive. It's like, this is what it is. They'll say, possibly, could have been.
Not a lot, right?
And so, yeah, we would spot it. But so what we need to understand is that we can interpret, like, maybe Joseph you imagine him getting a commandment to live this. And so he just tersely goes and tries to do it and say, okay, good, check that off, we're done, good. It's not gonna be another 10 years till he even tries to marry somebody else. So the 31, or sometime during the 30s, they don't exactly know the date. Sometime in the early 30s in Kirtland, the family algebra. But then we're back to 132. Notice this, how it starts. The Lord says to him, he must have asked a question, because you're going to hear it right here. Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, my servant Joseph, that inasmuch as you inquired of my hand to know and understand wherein I, the Lord, justified my servants Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and also Moses, David, Solomon, my servants, as touching the principle and doctrine of their having many wives and concubines. Behold, and lo, I am the Lord thy God, and will answer thee as touching this matter. I just love that. It's like, I'm going to get to it, okay? You're the little kid right now. Tell me. He's like, okay, I'm going to get to it. And then it says, behold, and lo, I, the Lord thy God, and will answer thee as touching this matter. Therefore prepare thy heart to receive and obey the instructions which I am about to give you. For all those who have this law revealed unto them must obey the same. So I'm going to prepare you for that. And what I'm now going to do between verse 4 and 33 is I'm going to tell you about celestial marriage. That's where people get off on this. They get it wrong. Because think about that. If you just ask the question about polygamy and why they have polygamy, and then you read verse 4 and says, I'm going to prepare it for you. or I'm going to prepare you for it. And then he says, so all those must obey the law, that must be obeyed the same. And then verse 4, for behold, I reveal unto you a new and everlasting covenant, and if ye abide not that covenant, then ye are damned. And so people go, oh my goodness, he just connected that with the verse before, they were talking about polygamy, and so if I don't abide by it, I'm damned. And because we had years of church people misreading that, we had this whole doctrine that you have to live polygamy someday. That's not true. He's going to now describe celestial marriage. That's the backdrop. That's the foundation. The number one thing, and we're going to see that in section 49 of the Doctrine and Covenants. That question in section 49 is, Lord, we're getting these people coming in from the Quakers, and they say celibacy is the way. Where do we stand on that? I love that about Joseph. He goes and asks questions that I would think most normal people go, you guys are crazy. I don't even pray about that. But he goes and prays about it. Did I say Quakers? Shakers? Think shakers? Yeah.
So in verse 4, when it says a new and everlasting covenant, that's when he switches to celestial marriage, because that's the same meaning as celestial marriage, right?
Exactly. Equal. New and everlasting covenant. But it's not all that it means. A new and everlasting covenant is also baptism, it's the gospel. It's the whole gospel of Abraham that was restored. It's all of those put together. That's the new and everlasting covenant. And so marriage is just one. Plural marriage is going to be a part. He's going to get to that at the end of this. And those are difficult words too. We're not going to extract the whole thing today, because there's some rough things said to Emma and other things. Section 132 was given because they're in Nauvoo, and Hiram finally finds out about it. Hiram's one of the last people to know. Because Joseph could just sense, oof, you know when you talk to somebody and you can tell they're not going to be too receptive, you just kind of avoid it? Joseph was that way with Hiram. And then Hiram had been shooting it down with all these people that he's hearing it from 1 to 12, until finally he went to Joseph and said, Joseph, I'm hearing all this thing. Is this true? And then he struggled. And then he got so on board, he said, well, Emma's having a hard time. Let me go help you with Emma. Write it out. Write out what you need to tell her. And that's the birth of section 132. And so he goes and reads 132 for the first time to Emma. And I'm not sure how well she deals with that. Bless her heart, folks. Bless her heart. We come into this room with compassion for everybody. Wow. Okay, so that's kind of that part. Let me go to some questions here. Oh, let me get this quote for you first of all before we move on. Elder Nash, in the article that I gave you, the New and Everlasting Covenant. Some people, including some church members, inaccurately and read Doctrine and Covenants 132:4 to mean that plural marriage is necessary for exaltation, leading them to believe that plural marriage is a necessary prerequisite for exaltation in the eternal realm. This, however, is not supported in the Revelations. Then later it's qualified, earlier, 1933. I can't believe we ever taught this stuff. It was said so early. First presidency. Celestial marriage, that is marriage for time and eternity, and polygamous or plural marriage are not synonymous terms. Monogamous marriages for time and eternity, solemnized in our temples, in accordance with the word of the Lord and the laws of the church, are celestial marriages.
Who is that from?
That is, That
was Elder Nash.
Elder Nash, in our article, I'll send you what I sent to the state.
But he's quoting First Presidency,
But,
right?
yeah, so First Presidency declaration there. And then he also, I think I missed the first one there. I thought they put the name of the guy. And then this one, Penrose, there we go. So he was a member of the First Presidency. On behalf of the First Presidency, in response to the question, is plural or celestial marriage essential to a fullness of glory in the world to come? Charles Penrose wrote, celestial marriage is essential to a fullness of glory in the world to come, as explained in the Revelation concerning it, but it is not stated that plural marriage is thus essential. And that's what kills me. 1933, why were we teaching? Why did I grow up hearing that or having that feel that we were going to have to live it someday? Yeah.
Well, I think the reason they're providing an explanation, I think the reason why there's confusion is because if you go back and read writings by Brigham Young, John Taylor, and Wilford Woodruff, they say the contrary.
Yeah. So it's,
And the FLDS, if you ever study their faith, they split off after Woodbrook, right?
right. It would be like people today, a portion of your ward splitting out because they want to have a third hour still.
But the
I thought, no, we're not going to equate third hour to polygamy, but you know, it's like when a change comes, how well are we going to adapt to it? But good
I
point.
think saying, this is maybe for educational sake, but the FLDS still call it the New Everlasting Covenant. And
Bless
so when
their
you have
hearts.
splinter groups split off from Mormonism, they still use that term to mean.
Right, because they went back to this.
That's what causes all this confusion.
Yeah, and they were so adamant that these verses meant this, that they couldn't change. And our apostles are here to interpret those scriptures for us. And so they have, and that's where we're at there. I'm going to just shift gears here. So 1831 is when we have an attempt at it. Then in 1840 is when we start living it in, not till Nauvoo. So we're going to go through Kirtland and Missouri and all that stuff. And it's going to be quiet. Why is it going to be quiet?
It's awkward.
It's so many levels of it. They're going to link it to temple things, so we're going to try to keep it, sacred.
And
But also socially, hello, you just can't go out and tell people.
and it's against the law.
It's against the law. So it's like, how are we going to go about doing this? Here God's commanded us to do something. And that's the crux of it, you guys. Think about this. This is, if it's true, and that's where you have to go back to what's at the core of this. If God is speaking to a prophet, and whenever anyone starts wanting to talk about polygamy first, I'm like, well, how's your testimony about him in the grove? Because if we believe he saw God the Father and Jesus Christ, and that he's God's prophet, I'm not saying you have to wholesale say, okay, whatever you say, I'm going to believe. Brigham said that. He said, you can't have a bunch of mindless people. You need to think it for yourself. You need to go and pay a price. You need to go through complexity. And believe me, everyone that lived polygamy went through complexity. No one went, woohoo! I'm so glad I was asked to do this. At least I didn't find anyone in any of the things that I read. If you guys find anyone that went woohoo, let me know. All right? But that's the way all of us are going to go through something like that. And either you've already been through it or you're going through it right now. You just keep plugging ahead in it. You keep searching. There are so many good sources out there. That's something, too, I'll just say about these sources out here. Because you can go and find a lot. Boy, believe me, I've been typing in polygamy all day today during the week. Either I just glance over a lot of stuff that I sort of lose the spirit of seeing even the titles of it and where they're coming from. But if you have a truth in these circles out here, will you feel it's a truth? I think it's skewed. It's going to be. Elder Golden said that the Spirit accompanies truth. So if you go to a place that is, that the Spirit knows is a very anti kind of a place or a negative towards it, they may put all the truths that are very true, but it's not going to be accompanied by the Spirit. And it makes sense, because otherwise you'll attach things, oh, I felt the Spirit here, so this must be true, and then Satan's just going to throw a bunch more things on that same site. Well, if that first thing was true, this all must be true. And so, the other thing that gets me when I talk to people, they go, oh yeah, well, all these church sites you give me, Brother Garlic, they're biased. And the ones you're looking at aren't. So can we all just be intellectually honest and just say that every site's going to be biased? Is that fair? And so you just have to say, I got to be a wise shopper when I'm looking for things to teach me about some of the areas that I'm shaky in with this topic. And really assess, is this true? Is it leading me to Christ? Because remember, these are secondary questions. Your salvation, your exaltation comes with that core thing of celestial marriage. That's a doctrine. But this other, that happened to a group of our people a long time ago who were heroes in doing it. And you're not being asked to do it. And yet we get all hung up. We get all these phantom pains for these people. And it's like, they already went through it. They're dead. They're in the spirit world. They're happy. Why do we have to be bogged down by this? So go through and find those sources that are going to help you. And it might be that you'll come home and you'll say, like I did to my wife, hey, I get it. Or you may just have to shelf it and say, I'm going to enjoy all these other things for right now because I don't have the answer to that. But there's some explanation. So some of those things I'm going to say to you, it's the angle that we're taking in a faith-filled church. Remember, they started talking about these topics because they wanted us to talk about them in faith-filled places, where we start with a song and a prayer, and we have the Spirit, so that we can have the Spirit confirm to us those things, as opposed to going to anti-places. Okay, so maybe what I should do is look at our questions that have been coming in. I thought I turned on my sound. I haven't heard anything. Oh, I have some. All right, so some of this, okay, disclaimer. I heard it on a podcast one time, and they said, we're going to now have question and response. Q&R, they call it Q&R. They kept doing that. Why are they doing Q&R? It's Q&A. And I thought, no, Q&R is much wiser. Because if I say to you, oh, yeah, it's time for the question and answer, what am I assuming I'm going to do for you?
You have to answer.
Yeah, and guess what? I don't. So I'll at least respond, but I love Eric's responded a couple times now, and I love what you've shared. And others, you've got responses. And let's just keep building faith here. That doesn't ever mean that we go, oh, we can't talk about that because that's going to undermine faith. It's like, let's walk into it. Let's go into it and just straight into it. I was out on a church history tour, and a very dark, tumultuous cloud was coming towards us. It was starting to look green, and then it started to hail. And I'm like going, these are all tornado stuff. And our bus driver just kept going. We just drove through it, and we were creeping. And we just kept going. And pretty soon, sky, blue sky. If we would have stopped the car, we'd have been in that rain a lot longer for the bus. And so I like that with these kind of things. Let's just go right for it. That's why we're talking about these things. All right, so I welcome your thoughts and things. I'm going to go to the very first one that we have here. Boom. Oh, boy, someone's been typing a lot. Have you been listening or just texting? Okay, we're going to start with number one. Yeah, I love it. I love it. Thank you. Question, why is it necessary for Joseph Smith to marry both a mother and her daughter if sealing one would inherently connect the family eternally? Yeah, I don't know. That was an easy one for me. I mean, this might be a little bit backwards here as I go through this. Marrying a mother to a daughter. Joseph Smith married both Patty Bartlett. When I saw Bartlett in the list, I was wondering if you guys knew anything. Patty Bartlett Sessions and her daughter, Sylvia Sessions, Lyon. If the purpose of sealing it is to unite families at the afterlife, the mother would already be sealed to her daughter. So that's an excellent question. So now, what I love about that is, again, my response is, there are some awesome places to find this out. Joseph Smith's Polygamy.org, I think, is an excellent place to go. The reason why I say that is that in the curriculum, let me show you real quickly this curriculum. And I'd invite you to go into the curriculum that the church has for this. It's really skinny, right? I mean, they're just giving summaries of the gospel topic essays. Here's Foundations of the Restoration, plural marriage. And at the very bottom of this, don't look at the screen. I love it when the church does this. They put sites up there and says, this is not an official church site, but they're giving it to us. I'm like, good, thank you. So, Joseph Smith's Polygamy website, they have so much you go through and read about these. And so there'd be that wrestle with that situation. It's a great question. I'm not dismissing it. I just don't know the answer to it. But go here and read about each of those people and start looking at that and say, all right, maybe yes, sealing families together. Remember, as they start sealing families together, they think sealing is more of a horizontal direction. I just love you guys all so much. I just want you all in my family, so I'm going to get sealed to all of you. It's going to be Brigham later that instead of, they stop that practice, but Brigham starts, do you know what he did? Adoption sealings.
Yeah.
So now I just want to be a part of your family so bad, you adopt me as your son. And so in the next life, they have this picture of this. And then it wasn't until later they said, people, just stick to your families. And that's what we see years of now, okay? So there's something to that question I think is going to answer that. It's just, it was messy.
along with the messiness, wasn't there just such a feeling of everyone wanted to be related to Joseph Smith? So like, he sealed to a lot of people because they wanted to be part of his family.
Yeah, and so 30 to 40 is who he was actually sealed to, and then after his death, I think it went up to like 60. And it was back some years ago that Susan Easton Black went in and said, yeah, nice try, everybody. Because they went in and had somebody proxy for Joseph, just so I could be related to him. And so I've heard people talk about that sort of dynasties. It's like, hey, let's gather our families together. And again, it's a nice sentiment. You're loving people, but we want your hearts to turn to your followers, not somebody else's followers. Because those followers are turning to you. So, good question there. Yes?
But if a man has a family with children, with a wife, and he marries a second wife, those children are not sealed to that second wife.
No.
So maybe that's why.
Could be. We don't know. So we just say a
Seems like
lot
a
of
practical reason.
It could be. Yeah.
Can you repeat the question to the?
Oh, sorry. I need a. This is long enough. I can. Here.
Just repeat it.
Because I'm not going to be able to repeat it because that's how short my brain is. I'm goldfish mind.
No.
No,
She asked.
I said,
Here.
if a man is married and has children and takes a second wife, the second wife is not related to the children of the first wife. Maybe that's why he married both the wife and the daughter.
Okay, so then that would be you go in and you do the research and you look at it and you put that together.
Yeah.
If it's that important to you.
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Why wouldn't that be important to the church though, instead of clarify? Like if there's something that's problematic like that, that's troubling to members to the point where it hurts their faith, is it just something that we have to take in and say, oh, it's just a tough question, we don't know the answer? Like, there has to be an answer, right? Like, I don't quite understand why we have to be the ones to decide the answer for ourselves just so that we feel better about it. You know what I mean?
True, and then maybe there's one out there, and there's just the right resource to look at. One other principle-wise thing I would just suggest to that, and I appreciate that question. Where's my conference? Last April, 24. Elder Carpenter. He sealed peaches in his talk. Remember that?
What?
It's right there at the top, fruit that remains.
Fruit that hurt.
Because I've had some questions. My mom died 25 years ago. My dad resealed a couple times. He's like, I'm not sure I want to be with her. And I'm like, and so he's asking these questions, you know, and it's like not like the church really comes out and says it, but I kind of have my own thing that I wing it. I'm like, yeah, this is what I think, and I don't know if that's true. I'm filling the gaps. Elder Carpenter filled the gaps. There are so many good principles in this talk, which is not coming up because I didn't join internet, I guess. But
Is the type.
there we go, right there. His picture wasn't there. But he talks about a lot of good things. So let's study principles of sealing and whatnot. I'm not familiar with that one enough that I've got it on my phone now. I'll probably go and do someone I want to do a study. Another question, how does the practice of polyandry align with D&C 132-61, which emphasizes only marrying virgins or for polygamy? Yeah, and that's a whole other thing. Like I said, in section 132, I was like, it's got a lot of stuff, I don't know. I don't understand it all. But the polyandry part is interesting. So, let me go to something on that. I have so many things on this slide. It's going to take me a second to slide you. Boom, Joseph Smith's reluctance. Boom, boom, boom. I thought I had one for marriages, for seal. Seal to a married woman. There are several possible explanations for this practice. These sealings may have, notice that language, may have. All right, because we have to do that. Because we don't have all of the pieces. May have provided a way to create an eternal bond or link between Joseph's family and other families within the church. These sealings may also be explained by Joseph's reluctance to enter plural marriage because of the sorrow it would bring to his wife Emma. He may have believed that sealings to married women would comply with the Lord's command without requiring him to have normal marriage relationships. And then you can say, again, done. Does that kind of help? The polyandry part?
I learned a lot about polygamy and these historical things through the Church History Matters podcast. Early January 2024, they did a series of podcasts on it, and this is Casey Purvis and Scott. Casey and Scott, now. And they teach church histories, one at BYU, Idaho. And their podcasts are great. And they bring on other experts, and they explain a whole lot of this. I wish I could put it all into word right now. But they weren't necessarily things that I was super worried about, but they put so much context historically, anyway, I just highly recommended Church History Matters podcast.
And that, I would say, all of us are kind of like armchair historians, or maybe some of you aren't, but I was listening to them all week, getting ready for today, because I love that podcast. So you're just getting a regurgitated podcast for me, in my style. No, there's a lot of other things, but turn to experts. That I think is a good, turn to reliable sources. Please.
Can I clarify something about, when you talk about coming to these questions with faith, and we read things like this from the church that say, this may be a reason, this may be a reason, because the church doesn't know either. Is coming to it from faith automatically discounting the opposite? Because you mentioned anti-stuff before. Can I not approach this question in faith and think that those don't answer it and another one is simpler?
I guess what I'm thinking, if we approach it in faith, I'm thinking, I face on Jesus Christ and the atonement, and whether I answer this or not, it's not going to rock me. But let me show you something that is to your question too, is it's kind of a struggle here. Oh boy, where did I put all that? Oh, right here. So this is from Keith Erickson, Real versus Rumor. Anything of his would be a good thing to have. He's a historian that's meeting with us every week, and we're going over all this stuff.
As employees?
As employees, yeah. But I love this picture. And this is why, to that question that we couldn't quite answer, look, give ourselves a break. Give the church a break. Because the past, everything outside that circle is the past. Not everyone experienced the same past, but there's some people that did experience it. That's our next circle. Then of those that experienced it, there's those that remember it, right? And of those that remember it, there's some that recorded it. But of those things that are recorded, only some of it got preserved. And of all that got preserved, how much of it have we discovered? And so to this one question right here, it's like, good grief. Did somebody, do we need to do research to find the aunt that talked about that couple, or the polyandry and things? And really the church puts that language in there because the historians just don't find this. If it's for sure, they find it and it's for sure, they'll say it for sure. But otherwise they leave a little door open. That's what historians do. I don't know if any of you have read Bushman.
Richard Bush.
Thank you. Rough Stone Rolling. Anyone read Rough Stone? Yeah, and people, I remember looking on a Deseret Book on that, and people put 1 star and saying, I don't like how he words things, because he's a historian, so he's just purportedly, and stuff that's not, we want him to say, sure, Joseph did do this, but he's a historian. And so we have to just know the church is being much more open than ever before, but the historian's voice is going to come out, which is going to have a little bit of vagueness to it because of history.
I'll shut up after this, but
Please don't.
with this in mind, so this is in terms of actual recorded history and us looking back and saying, what do we have that is like hard proof of like, here's the reasoning why things happen.
Trying to put pieces
from
together.
from the revelations of the time, right? So we believe that prophets have some communication with God, inspired or not.
Right.
And if in the present day we still believe that modern revelation can be given to the prophets and they can ask in faith, and like it makes you wonder, have they been just praying for 200 years and never gotten an answer to these questions of the complexities of things to put members' minds at ease, and they're just like, how does that come into play with, we're relying on the church and the historians to discover new information, so that we can put some of these things out. But we also have a direct line to God to get the answers directly. So I'm wondering why we don't get anything
question.
from God nowadays that clarify very important doctrine relating to this stuff.
That's a good question. Yeah, you got a thought on that? Here.
My thought, I speak really loud, can you hear me? Yeah, okay. My thought on that is the Lord saying, that's great, but have you mastered everything at your level yet? No? Then okay. I feel once we master everything, we'll be privileged to know the answers to all.
True. But then I'm not going to paint with a big broad brush either, because I think, to your point, if we're a family and our dad just saw this cool dream, there's going to be some of us who go, that's great, I don't know if you're going to do something. And someone's going to say, I want to know too. I want to know the answer to that. And if some of these are those kind of answers to you, turn to some of these resources and keep looking. Maybe you'll be the historian that finds it. But seriously, this Keith Erickson, I'll send him questions every week after our course. I'll say, yeah, I remember this when I was in high school. I remember this. And man, it was like we're playing ski. He's just shooting me out, giving me the full truth on it. Truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And so, yeah,
Well, if the prophet gave us all the answers, we wouldn't have room for faith. I think that's a big part of it too, that God expects us to maybe stretch ourselves to believe in a prophet even when we don't have the direct answer that we want.
and that's the complexity, ambiguity, and I just said that with a word of emphasis. Ambiguity is in here. And yeah, welcome to life.
Well, and I think there's a timing thing too, where we want it now. You look at the revelation for blacks in the priesthood, which I don't know, like how long have they been praying to get that answer? And there's a lot of crazy stuff that was written and spoken by leaders of the church before that. And at some point, finally, I guess, I don't know, the 12 are ready, or the church was ready, or the Lord was just like, guys, here's the answer. You know, act on it now. And that maybe it's just not there yet, or it hasn't been opened enough.
And for all of the questions we have for polygamy, we then want prophets to go do it for everything else. And so right now, the prophet's in a whole new, he's blazing new trails and new ground. He's kind of left a lot of us back behind. So again, there's sources that can help us a little bit more with this. Yeah.
Well, I just said, and when he gave it out, he said this, because he was asked the question, why did Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and all these guys do it? He said, because I told them to. I deemed it. There's times I deem it, and there's times I don't.
Oh, okay. You know what? Let's go to that. Let's go to Jacob 2. Because here's a group of members. They're members of the Church of Israel, right? They're in a whole new land, and like with every group of people, after you get together for too long, maybe you start having groupthink. You start building a tower to get to heaven or something else, and it's like, people, let's come back. So they have the prophet Jacob bringing them back, and he tells them, oh, your pride, yuck, 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 and we're done with that. And then he says, oh boy, but the word of God burdens me. I'm not done. Don't go home. The word of God burdens me because of your grosser crimes. For behold, thus saith the Lord, this people begin to wax in iniquity. They understand not the scriptures, for they seek to excuse themselves in committing whoredoms because of the things which were written concerning David and Solomon. Wait, didn't we just in Dr. God say, hey, they were listed in that group of good people? Well, they were. So you're going to find places where God says, hey, they were good people and they were allowed to live it. And then other places where he goes, yeah, they're done. Because the Lord is seeing all of it at one time. And so there's times that David and Solomon, you're right on. Have more than one wife. Have more than one concubine. Same with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. But then there's a principle here. Look at it. So they noticed that they took it and they said, hey, they are doing it. Let's do it. It's in the scriptures. We're living the gospel if it's in the scriptures, right? Behold, David and Solomon truly had many wives and concubines, which was abominable before me. Wait. Somewhere along the line, it got abominable. Wherefore, thus saith the Lord, look for why it became abominable. Thus saith the Lord, I have led this people forth from the land of Jerusalem by the power of mine arm, that I might raise up to me a righteous branch from the fruit of the loins of Judah. In other words, the thing group, let's get you out of Israel and let's get you separated and think straight. And now you're starting to think, we're here too. Well, again, we do that if we don't get God in us in our lives. Wherefore I, the Lord, will not suffer this people that they shall do like unto them of old, i.e., take more than one wife or concubine. Wherefore, my brethren, hear me, and hearken to the word of the Lord, for there shall not any man among you have save it be one wife, and concubines you shall have none. For I, the Lord God, delight in the chastity of women, and whoredoms are an abomination before me. Thus saith the Lord of hosts. Wherefore this people shall keep my commandments, saith the Lord of hosts, or cursed be the land for their sakes. And then this. For if I will have you live this law, saith the Lord of hosts, to raise up seed unto me, I will command my people. Otherwise they shall hearken unto this law. The ground law is one wife, one man, one woman. That's a marriage. And I may come in and from time to time, for a season, implement this other thing. That's for God to do and how he does it. You guys have taken it on yourself. When you do this study, that's what ends up taking this whole thing. Because Joseph is keeping it very tight. You are not living this law unless the prophet has asked you to. A few of the men wanted to live it, and they would come to Joseph and say, hey, put my hand on the ring, I'm willing to. And he would determine that. You see that filter of keys? You're going through the prophet. Until, is it William? John C. Bennett gets this idea of, that sounds like a pretty good idea, but I don't want to go through the prophet. So he just starts talking. Joseph had said a scripture one time, not a scripture, but gave a talk one time, basically said to the brethren, be merciful to you and I'll be merciful to you. That if we don't thrash each other's sins, then we have no sin, that we are right with each other and we're right with God. And John C. Bennett took that to think, hey, that means if we don't ever talk about our sins, we've never sinned. Hey, honey, I know I'm not married to you, but you know what? We can have sex. If we don't tell anyone, then it's okay. And that's called spiritual wifery. That would be Satan's way of doing things. All right, I'm not even going to get to our modern day today because we have such an issue with polygamy sometimes, but I'm like, good grief, people. We're at least claiming it's coming from God to a prophet, to people, and it's controlled, rather than sports people or other people or whatever that's trying to repopulate the world in their genes without any marriage. Right? I mean, come on. At least this is a controlled way of doing it. It's odd to the world, but the world sure thinks it's okay for a man to go and have plenty of mistresses. And that's not weird. We're at least marrying people. They're sealing by a prophet. It's kind of good.
So, what was the gain?
Say that again.
What was the gain before marriage? What did these men gain? What did Joseph gain by having more than was it
Raise up the seed.
It seemed like it was more of
I think
You think about that. Okay, if we presentism, see, they always go say, wow, what lucky guys have all these women.
Oh, no.
And just because of the weird, look, guys, can we admit we are in an overly sexualized world right now? Where Big Love and whatever that other show's called on TV that's mimicking
Secret Lives of Women.
Oh, jeez. Watched one episode of that. Killed it. Sister wives. The sister wives. And those things. It's like people are infatuated with it. It's like, oh, let's just, we're in a weird world. And so to think that these prim and proper members of our church at one time did this out of the box. You guys, there's no evidence that it was a sexualized thing. It was so controlled. And there was a hammer of thought, please.
Oh, no, I was just building it because you gave reasons and then you turned to the sexual nature of it. And like, I understand that there's not, there's a lot of records that talk about how it was not sexual. He doesn't have children from most, if not all, of the people that he married. But I've always wondered the question of, but could it have been about loyalty and power and not any of those things? Because it's very hard for me to accept that it was just, well, it was a biblical commandment and they just had to live it, and so
Okay.
it's like.
So you used the
Doesn't
word
have to
or,
section.
and I'll just tell you something, because you said, so it was this, or could it have been this? And one of the things as we search for truth is guard against, I don't want to say diabolical, what's two? Diametrically, having only two choices. Too many times in the church we go, it's right or it's wrong, it's black or it's white, it's this way or that way. What if it's both?
What if it's practical?
The image that he has in one of his books is, and we're not gonna have a debate about this, but toilet paper. Rolling towards the outside, correct, or rolling towards the wall? So instead of saying either or, we say it can go this way and it can go that way. And to stay open to it. Because I think we have to sort of just get all of the, I tell you, Paul, salvation. Baptists, they'll take one verse and they'll say, this is how salvation is, and that's it, that's the only way. But you go through Paul and you look at all the times when he said salvation comes through this, and you put it all together as one, you get the whole gospel. You have faith, you have works, you have baptism, you have all these things. Paul says everything. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. He says it all. Someone just takes one little thing and says, that's it, that's a detriment. We have to keep our minds open and say, I can accept everything. God accepts all truth. So I'm going to. Please.
Kind of in answer to his question, I go back to Jacob on that. Why did the Lord command it? Well, to raise up seed. And, you look at the kind of situation the church was in, persecution, they had to flee to Utah, to the west. They were small in numbers, and this really increased the numbers and strengthened the church quite a bit, I think.
Good point. And like, our numbers in the state are going down and we're not going to implement it. Promise you. But yeah, you think about it. You think of how, if you went by just your baptisms in your wards and your states for the growth of the church.
Do you have your numbers of your
And,
grandparents?
oh, yes, this is kind of fun. I went back and did my little, whoops. Lamb of God, make sure you get the Lamb of God.
In the middle.
Where? So I did this little crazy thing here. I'm going to put it down here.
You can't see it on the screen. Oh,
I just want those right there because I don't want you to see the rest of the numbers. So I went back and to my second great grandparents, not my grandparent, but my second grades, there were 17 men and 39 women in my line that lived polygamy. From that came 200 children. Okay, so then now the rest of this is just me being weird. But I came from a family of 5, so I then think, okay, if every one of those children go on to have 5 children, the next generation, the grandparent level would be 1,000. Then the parent level would be 5,000, which would put me at a group of 25,000 people that came from that, which would then mean the children of all of us would be 125,000. Our grandchildren would be 625,000, and our great-grandchildren would be over 1 million.
3 million.
3 million.
3 million.
If you all had 5.
If I want to raise seed up to me, you think about it. You try to implement it now, not going to happen. But you go back in the time when there's a place for the pioneers to escape and live it in a kind of ostracized place for 50 years, from 40 to 90. Holy smokes, you just put Miracle-Gro on the church.
Yeah.
Right? You got things going. All the particulars here and there, I mean, it was messy, you guys. It was messy. It wasn't a pleasant thing. But we got a boost to our church. Eric, your thought, question?
Well, in fact, I would love to make so many comments because, like I
Please.
said,
Keep in mind.
Now, I was going to say, first off, I want to give you credit for attacking this subject because I'm so glad you're teaching this up there and not me, because this is a really sensitive subject. But
Thanks.
I hear so many really good questions from all of you, and You know, you asked a question about Joseph Smith and, sexuality. Well, if you just forget about Joseph Smith for a minute, and you talk about Brigham Young, John Taylor, Wilford Woodruff, my great-grandmother, they must have had sex, or I wouldn't be here today, right? And so if you just say to yourself, okay, Joseph Smith may or may not have had sex, everyone behind him did, so does it really matter if Joseph Smith himself didn't do it? I mean, Brigham Young did. Trust me, I grew up in Utah around tons of Youngs. And then your point about seed, I hear it all the time, but you have to look back as a historian and realize that the War of 1812 in America was just over. And there was a shortage of men, and out in the West especially, how I describe it, when there weren't a lot of, I guess the best way to describe it is worthy men, because that's how a lot of Mormons describe it. But my great-grandfather, in fact, if you open this hymn book right here, turn to page 225, my great-grandfather wrote that hymn, and he crossed the plains. But he was a worthy member, was not ever asked to practice polygamy. And so you always have to ask about, okay, what about the men that were never asked to practice polygamy? What happened to them? And so there was a lot happening at that time. And then when they finally got to Utah, sometimes you hear people say, well, there weren't enough men in Utah. Well, there were a ton of fur trappers out here in Utah, and soldiers out in Utah. And so there were actually more fur trappers, miners, soldiers in Utah than there were actually women in Utah. And that says nothing about the Native Americans either, right? And so, there's a lot of room for discussion here, right? And then when we talk about offspring polygamists, I see the numbers. I mean, don't get me wrong, I see the numbers. But if you fast forward to 2025 today, and you talk to missionaries, the number one obstacle when you talk to converts is polygamy, right? Polygamy, blacks and priesthood, right? That's number 2.
We'll do that one next month.
Yeah. And I give you credit like for attacking it, but I mean, I didn't ask questions. I mean, I moved from Utah to California 4 years ago, and I asked about polygamy all the time, and it's a tough question. It's a tough subject. And for me, it's really hard because, like I said, I had polygamists down on the street in Utah, and I went to school with them.
Yeah.
And my parents used to hire them to come pick, apples and peaches in our orchard, and they were great laborers because they got paid cash and they worked all day. But anyways, there's a lot to this subject.
Great comments, Eric.
Yeah. You want this mic?
We're rolling it.
Doesn't it all have to come down to, do you believe in prophets so they can have revelation and that we should follow it?
Right. But what I love too, at the time when they did all these changes, Elder Ballard gave the best talk in the world. He says, gone are the days when we just say, oh, just forget about it. Just strengthen your testimony. Oh, just read your scriptures, say your prayers. I love that Elder Ballard, at the age that he was then, one of the senior apostles, said, there's no more shoveling things off to the side and say, yeah, we'll get to it later. Or just go do something else. And so please, I've got the rest of your questions on my phone, and I will text you, and we'll keep talking.
Answer if you want.
And I can even call you because I have your number. But you're not be in trouble. We know that Brigham Young has 56 children as a result of polygamy. Joseph Smith has 9 children with Emma. There's no evidence Joseph lived polygamy like Brigham Young did. What was the point of Joseph Smith having plural wives? Good question. As a leader, he's leading out. It's interesting. Later, Emma and Joseph Smith are third. They are fighting for the temple lot. They won't let them have the temple lot because they live polygamy, and so they're putting a rule on it. So they're trying to prove that Joseph didn't live polygamy. So there's affidavits that you can read of women being asked, did you have carnal relations with him? And the answer was yes. And they said, why didn't you have children? And her answer was so sweet. She said, I don't know. It must not have been in the hand of God. And 9 months later, he's killed. So we don't know I mean, it was a normal life of that. The reason why he doesn't have as many is because it's just barely starting out. Right? It's going to really get going once we're out of where it's illegal. It was just fine to live in Mexico.
Yeah, actually,
Fairly.
it was illegal in Mexico too.
Well, okay, well, we're rebels.
And Canada too.
So anyway, so that's a good question, but I just think he has to, because when you think about it, there's not one thing that Joseph Smith didn't touch in the restoration of this church. All the rest of the prophets have maybe remolded it or repackaged it, but everything was restored through Joseph Smith. He was the key for that.
You know, speaking of Joseph Smith, I mean,
Cue up my next question.
speaking of Joseph Smith, and you fast forward to his death, I mean, do you think he was killed because of polygamy?
Oh,
I mean, was he not thrown in jail because of what happened the night before?
it was.
So,
Yep.
I guess what I'm trying to say, polygamy has been a part of our church for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
and it caused his death.
Yeah. Kind of like Jesus saying, what caused his death? He likened himself to God. He said, I'll tear this down and I'll build it back up. And people got so offended eventually at what he was saying doctrinally that we got to kill you for it. And so maybe that's the whole reason why Joseph is going to live, but just because the Lord knows that'll be the trip point. I need him to be martyred. And that will do it.
Can we just do a small correction there?
Oh, yeah.
That the reason he was in jail was not because of polygamy per se, but because he had ordered the burning down of the printing press.
Yeah, not
That inflamed all of the mob.
Which,
And
that
was
printing press,
founded by-
yes, and he was trying to shut down them talking about him, the polygamy. He was trying to keep it quiet.
Right.
So that was one of the things that they had said, so he just went in and burned it down. Again, guys, it's atrocious today. And it Wild West. I have a little empathy towards all that. Thank you. Oh, a little note on that one. You're welcome. Why didn't the church let us know sooner about Joseph Smith and polygamy? You know what? There was just a weird time in the church. There just has been. And this age group are either you lived right through it or your parents from it. And we were just in that era of we don't talk about things. And we just kind of went, we just won't think about it. And then the internet comes, and these days, it's like, all of a sudden, we better talk about it. So that's when you have other Ballards saying, gone are the days that we could just not talk about these things. But he didn't say it like that. He said, let's go at these things full on. So, yeah, we are seeing the growth of the church. And the restoration's still happening. So we have more to go. Is it true? Well, that was the first part. Is it true that Emma was asked and gave permission to Joseph to take on new wives, but when she began to reject plural marriage, he no longer had to seek her approval? So there's a line in section 132 that says, and if she doesn't, then blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that ever happened. Well, yeah. I'll let you guys read all the stories. Okay, I've gone and read it. I don't want to start telling you the stories because you'll just hear it from me and it'll be half thing.
Tell us.
So, remember, Joseph has been commanded to live in commandment. So, and he's got his wife, and he's like, he finally convinces her that it's okay, and she is there at one of the ceilings, and spends the night with her, and Emma's done with her the next day, and she's out of the house. But there was two that were living in the house, two young women that were housemaids. Can't remember their names right now, and something had happened, and he had got sealed to them without Emma knowing. And so he was talking to her about kind of saying, I think these two are next, and sort of playing like, hey, I'm not married to them, but they were, and then she gave her permission. But then those two got kicked out too, just because Emma, bless Emma's heart, you guys. Wow. You marry this guy, and then this starts happening.
Yeah.
But again, that picture of Abraham and Isaac, we all go through that. We all go through something in our lives like that. Please, Kristen.
Did Emma know about Fanny Elder?
Did Emma know about Fanny Elder? Yeah, she and Oliver both knew.
Did she give permission for it?
There was a problem that he was having with, no. Remember, this is the very first attempt. Who knows what kind of invitation he had to live the law of polygamy at that point? But he just goes, okay. I think it was her brother, he told her the words to say to marry them. And then that one lasted a very short time, and then they got a divorce. That's the other thing too with all this. While you have this crazy world where it's like, especially Catholicism with no divorce, it was very encouraged, or not encouraged, but there was no batting an eye. No one, if you wanted to end this thing, women could end it, and they weren't forced. But please.
I was just curious. Brother, do we know the age? I'm just curious if it was like a priest age or elder age, or in terms of like the prophet giving some of the sealing keys at the time to marry them, or if it was just a marriage. It's tricky because it's like it wasn't a legal marriage because it wasn't legal, but if the sealing power wasn't revealed yet, how did that work?
Back then, for Fanny, it wouldn't have been.
Right.
So it was just a regular marriage. And so it's not going to be till Kirtland, year, I just went blank, 36. It's not going to be till 36. So that was 31 that Fanny Alger, sometime during that time. 36 it gets the sealing power.
Right, and then by that time I think Fanny had moved and then
It had left, yeah. This is good. Are we feeling okay here? We good? Good? I'm feeling good. We've gone longer than ever. If you need to go, go. Let me see here. Okay, in section 132, verse 51, what is the commandment that God is referring to in verse 51? Again, I may not know much of this one. Verily I say unto you, a commandment I give unto my handmaid Emma, your wife, who I have given unto you, if she stay herself and partake not of that which I command you to offer unto her. For I did it, saith the Lord. Oof. I am not clear on that one. 51. The other thing I like where it says this is in 132, it says to Emma, forgive him of his sins. So I think about that. Think about the nature of that. Joseph Smith is receiving a revelation, and he is so true to what the Lord tells him. Part of this revelation is forgive your husband for his sins. Because guess what, guys? Maybe he did do it wrong. Maybe he did do it in an offensive way. Maybe he did do it behind her back. Just like you and I screw up. And if all of us have this idea that I'm offended because Joseph Smith wasn't perfect, go take a long look at yourself in the mirror. Because the only person that qualifies to look in the mirror and say I'm perfect is Jesus. And otherwise, we kind of got to deal with the warts. And boy, I'll tell you, the Lord gave us a big wart in the church at a very early time of the church that we're all kind of struggling with. And I think it's good. I hope this has been positive for you. I hope you're not leaving. My biggest worry today was that I don't want anyone to leave weaker or less faith or just anything. I want you to feel strengthened in Christ. Let me do a couple more here. How can it be of God and justified when God's word disallows, with these verses all reference one man and one wife, Deuteronomy? Yeah. So all these verses where it says one wife, one man, a bishop shall have one wife, it's all through there. Okay? One explanation I've heard about that is there's a commandment, thou shalt not kill. This circumstance at this time, Nephi, I need you to kill somebody. We're not going to start a new thing in the church and say, okay, now everyone, I need you to live the law of killing people. But we have to be sure that we're very careful of the liberties we take. Remember the Book of Mormon people, the liberty they took was, oh, sure, let's go have more wives. No, it wasn't in the controlled way you aren't seeing that down the road. So sometimes the devil will get into us and get us to take liberties, claiming we're being so righteous, claiming we're following the scriptures, when we really, it's like, yeah, we better check ourselves. Better check ourselves with the Spirit, check ourselves with our spouse, check ourselves with the Holy Ghost, check ourselves with scriptures, the prophet. Just sort of, right? That's part of the scriptures in section 121. Beware concerning yourselves. You get authority, you get knowledge, and the Lord knows you get a little into yourself. So, I don't know why I got onto that, but that might be it. There's just a lot of places where it says one wife, one man, and so the Lord is establishing, that is my gospel. That's the law. That's the big circle. And from time to time, I'm going to introduce the small circle. Without that, you don't have 12 tribes. I need 12. That's my priesthood number. And that needs to be a symbol for the rest of the world. Blah, blah, blah. I don't know what else. All right, here. If you guys are listening or typing. Okay, we got the polyandry thing again. So yeah, okay, so this is, how does polyandry fit into the restored gospel, and why do we not talk about it ever? The only thing I could find in official doctrine was related to the law of adoption. Yeah, that was Brigham. We are often told the commandment was difficult, but has the church ever considered it might be wrong with polyandry? I think if you look at those sites, that you can see it all. You know, see it all laid out when they was married in this story. I think it was 5 that were previously married. One of the husbands was there at the wedding. It was a non-member, loved his wife. It just did not like the church. He said, "Hon, if you want to be in the next life, great. I'll be with you this life. You go that next life." So he was sealed to her for eternity, not time. And so you have to look at the innuendo there and say, okay, so if you're thinking, oh, this polyandry, it's wrong, maybe you're assuming, maybe you're filling a gap where you shouldn't, that this Joseph Smith's going ahead and having sex with this woman. Where it was just like, she wants to be with me in eternities, and so we're going to do that, just so she can be with me in eternities. So she has that hope of the celestial kingdom. Now she's assured of that.
But that's not the automatic assumption, though, that it could be sexual in this case. I think when it comes to that question of polyandry, for me, it's like, some of the husbands didn't know that it even happened. And so it presents a different problem depending on the wife you're talking about. Right?
Exactly. Which one? Because the other one's like, what you're probably thinking of, they're on missions.
Right.
Right? And so it's like, hey, cat's away. Except for, there's a lot more to read about those.
Right, but
So-
in those cases too, like the husband that you're talking about loved his wife dearly, and it's difficult for me to accept the idea that he would want to be with her for eternity, but because the woman can't be sealed to 2 men, Joseph essentially took her for eternity, even though he might have wanted her for eternity, right? So
Yeah.
the example that you gave doesn't track exactly.
True.
Right?
And that's where let's jump to modern day. Last conference in April, Elder Carpenter. I read that to my dad and talked to my dad, who's wondering who he's sealed to in the next life. And it kind of just says, you know what? We all just fill in the blanks. The Lord's going to take care of it. I've said it a couple of times. It was Elder Packer, but not the Elder Packer that just jumped into your mind. It was 17 Packer. It was his son. He gave a talk and said basically the mortality is like a journey. When we come down here and to return, we need some stamps in our passport. The stamp of salvation and the stamp of exaltation. Baptism, sealing. And I told my dad, I said, you got the stamp for Marlene for her. She has that. Whether or not she's going to be with you in the next life, the Lord is not going to force anybody. It's going to, maybe we're all going to be a bunch of singles there. This idea of one time that it's all going to be this big, and the world thinks that it's all going to be this big mass polygamy in the next life. There's nothing that says that. There might be some weird stories that we believed in the past. But you go and read that talk from last April conference and just sort of look at that's what the modern prophets are teaching. Is, hey, this polyandry stuff, it's not as big as we're making it. I think it was just, that guy came over and said, oh great, we're now related, we're gonna be with you in the next life. It was something that you and I have a hard time understanding. We're just thinking husband, wife, marriage things. But they're just thinking, hey, let's live in a cul-de-sac together. And they're all moving to the same cul-de-sac. But they're doing it with this ordinance. Please.
This was just making me think of the last time I went into the temple recently, and the name of the person I was doing the work for, the lady gave me the slip, and it was like this 20-letter long Japanese name that I had no idea how to pronounce, but you know, she looked at me and I looked at her, and we both laughed, and she was just like, it all gets sorted out up there. We can only just do our best. And like, that's what I think of in regard to this conversation. Like, it's all gonna get sorted out.
I appreciate that. And that's what I mentioned earlier about President Hinckley, and when Mike Wallace was talking to him about a few things, and about, they say you get your old world, and he said, we don't know much about that. Like, wait, my Sunday school teachers and seminary teachers have told me all about that. They know about it. How does the prophet not know about it? We filled in the gaps when we should. Please.
Yeah, I'm one of those. I'm sealed to two women. Daniel's mom and my wife.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that the Lord figures it out at the end, you know, and I'm sure my ex-wife doesn't want to live with me for eternity. I'm assuming, you know, but we're in good relationships. We've gone to the temple together. It was kind of weird, you know, going to my younger son's sealing in the temple, having both my wives walk up behind me going up. It was, I'm not married to her, but I'm sealed to her. And she has the stamp, and I don't want to take away that stamp unless some other guy wants to come and stamp it for her. Then I'd have no problem giving up that stamp.
And that's why that's how it works. And it turns out that Elder Carpenter's the one in charge of that.
Yeah.
At the church office, I've dealt with him on a number of unsealings.
Who wrote that thing down?
Yeah, he will take care of that. And I just love this. Again, these are such valid feelings, you guys. I love this. And we've talked about this already, but I'll just read this again so you know I'm reading your things. That last question that we just read was mostly had to do with secondary question. Why has it taken 200 years for the church to really discuss polygamy with members and address the issue it presents members struggling with their faith? Yeah, I think, I don't know what else we could add to that. It's kind of like the church was born as a little baby, and then we had teenager phase, and then we had the embarrassed phase that we didn't want to, I don't know. It just was, that was the...
Lived through the 50s.
You guys, when we talk about race in the priesthood, I mean, it's going to get even worse. I mean, that just wasn't changing because of your quorum of the 12 that couldn't agree on somebody having the priesthood. Wait, aren't they all supposed to just be Christ-like? There you go. It was a mess. It took the right group and the right prophet to make it, for people to die, for it to happen. So why wasn't that changed earlier? That is a great question. I love this question, but boy, we are going to ask it all the time. Why? The people weren't ready for race and priesthood. This, probably the same. We are a bunch of crazies. But look at the timing. Why did it wait 200 years? So that we can have so much material out there to read to help us. Just got to guard against the other side that is there to destroy you. The book, The Crucible of Doubt, talks about, that's a good book, I love that too. Talks about how prophets don't speak or receive the literal words of God directly, and they are only interpreters of feelings of the Spirit, and thus are prone to error. How does the church explain the language in the Doctrine and Covenants with relation to whether Revelations like 132 was an interpretation of the Spirit or a direct dictation? Oh, that's a good question. In the first person from God, as it is written with that language. Yeah. I don't know about that. So we'll be texting 760-519. That sounded almost like Jean Valjean. 760-51. Why did plural marriage ever go in the other direction? Meaning, why could a woman never have multiple husbands?
No, but why would they want to?
With polygamy. I think we're getting back to the point then with these questions is in the end, it really was about the stamp. And so, and I've even had, children who are like, who am I going to be sealed to in the next life? And do you realize your children go and get sealed to somebody else? And so, like, even the thoughts we have of families together and no empty chairs, if that's what Annette and I are saying, well, what about the empty chairs at their in-laws' house? Because they're not there, they're over in our celestial house. No, it really is couples are together forever. And that's the way it is. And then we get caught up on, well, who's he going to be sealed to? It's like, as soon as you get married, sealed with somebody, that's your stamp. You weren't stamped as a child. It was a temporary stamp. You had, because they were born under the covenant, you gave them the temporary stamp. But that was not forever. They need to go get their own stamp. Does that shake your core? Is that okay? I just said that. All right. I think we have one left.
I could always ask some more.
Eric, I would love to. We need to go to lunch. Orson Pratt gives a good explanation of polygamy in Journal Discourses. Yeah, today 58 countries currently allow plural marriage. Yep. Are they all kind of in the Middle East? Ish. Isn't that interesting? Right? I mean, that's Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. By the way, done a couple of interviews with our Farsi members for priesthood. And I felt guided to go to Abraham 1, verse 1 and 2, to read about Abraham leaving the land of the Chaldees, Iran, basically, seeking for greater, seeking for more, and to be having them read it in Farsi gives me chills. And I think that's kind of maybe where we should end, is get you back home from bed. But, Abraham was seeking for greater things. He was unsettled with where he was at. And he sought for the things of God. And he left what he needed to, and he went and found it. And let's keep seeking. Let's keep looking for greater knowledge, greater happiness, greater righteousness, greater things. And let's use what we've talked about tonight. It's just a springboard for that. This is not the gospel of Jesus Christ. The gospel of Jesus Christ is faith, repentance, baptism. But that's not even the gospel of Jesus Christ. It is Jesus Christ. All those things lead to him. He wanted to bless so many people at one time and get his blessing in the homes so much quicker that at one time he inspired a prophet to live the law of plural marriage so that more children could be raised at home, so that today the pioneer belt of the church, or whatever you want to call it, it was a spark to growing the church. And just as Joseph Smith comes out and then Brigham Young, Joseph Smith never really publicly announced it, so it's not till, in fact, I write those numbers down. Yeah, get this. When Joseph Smith dies in 44, 29 men and 50 women are living polygamy. By 47, 196 men, 521 women. The height of it in Utah, or in the Deseret, will be 50% of the churches living in. And that's the highest it gets, and then it comes down. But at each of those places, Joseph Smith or Brigham Young says it's official, people leave. Can't handle it. Wilford Woodruff, he announces no more. When Eric was talking about polygamists around the corner from him, they're not members of the church, right? We all know that.
Like traditional.
Exactly, because Wilford got it off. And then it was the other time that I wanted to share with you. So 1890 is the manifesto by Wilford Woodruff, and then it took 14 years. 1904, Joseph F. Smith gives the second manifesto and says, now it's really over. Gave him 14 years to kind of work it out, and you can read a lot of things about how messy that was. I mean, think about it.
Oh.
You've gotten serious relationships with people. You have children. But think about this. It's like pondered out. I thought, every one of you is asked for a reckoning. Do you have any financial or other obligations to a former spouse or children? just the way I think the Lord works and the way that these men being prophets they were, whatever did happen with that, I think they took care of each other. You look at some of these splinter groups, you watch those crazy things on TV about Warren Jeffs and stuff, and what they're doing and how it's structured there. You never meet anything in polygamy in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints that looks like that. They are a group that's living polygamy in a non-inspired, directed by prophet, asked by God to do it way. And so they are being led, and it's gross.
Very converted.
So I just testify that Jesus Christ is the head of this church. He speaks to prophets. He spoke to Joseph and to Brigham and boom, 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 and hey, President Nelson. I think Jesus must be just living in his house. Really so much revelation from him. It's amazing. How sad if whatever he asks us to do, we go, that's too hard. I asked Annette's permission after doing all this stuff with polygamy. I said, look, they never ask us again to live that. That was the hardest thing ever. So can I just have carte blanche if anyone just walks up to me? You know, usually they want you to breed your wife and then they give you a colony. I say, can I just say yes to anything because it's not going to be polygamy? So we've already worked that out. So it's already a automatic. It's not going to be polygamy. But I'll come on. Anyway, I just am so grateful to belong to a church that is really connected with revelation and with God. And I'm grateful for a Heavenly Father that gives us agency and a veil on purpose. And not as many details on purpose. So that we will struggle. So that we'll grow. The purpose is for us to become like Him. So I hope that each of us will figure out how, whatever we struggle with, whatever our worries or concerns or our trial of Abraham is, how is that making me more like Jesus Christ, my God? What am I learning to become more omniscient and omnipotent with that? I'm thankful for pioneers that dealt with what they had to deal with. You and I have our things to deal with too. And so I hope that we can do that with Jesus and find deliverance through Him. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.